What's up, passionate Pokemon players? I am Ryan, and we are here with another episode of the Hawks Pokemon Nest. Today, I am here to show off our tough, terrorizing Tyranitar Ex deck. This is another one of my decks that's it's pretty old. It's an older creation that I've been wanting to kind of throw in here, but I've got all kinds of other stuff. I've got a nice little backlog of nice rogue decks to show you all in here. It's a deck that's done pretty decent in locals. I think one time I took it, it had a winning record. I mean, again, none of my decks are meta decks. They're not, gonna usually win you your locals. Maybe sometimes they will. But it's a super fun deck to play, really cool, especially if you are a fan of Tyranitar. I think it makes it to where this is a viable, playable deck out there that can compete with the best of them. I do pretty decently with it online too. I've won my last couple matches with it, I believe. Done a little bit of tinkering with it as I've gone. It's one that it hasn't changed a lot since I first made it, which was in the Obsidian Flames era. So that kind of shows you where it's at. So it is a little bit behind in terms of some of these new meta cards, but I've got a few that are potentially able to swap in. But anyway, you'll see as I kind of go through it. We're going to go through, what each card is. I'll explain why I have each of those in there. We'll talk about the strategy and how to play it, what the strengths and weaknesses are, and then finally we'll go through some of these potential swaps for cards in there, which there are some potential for some of the newer cards. But overall, I think that this is a good deck. In fact, it kind of works in the current meta with releasing of Surging Sparks, and you're seeing more electric decks, which this one is an electric deck despite the Tyranitar normally being a ground type. We're using the Tyranitar EX Terra, so it is an electric, but you also see a lot more water Pokemon than usual out there, or at least, than as of recent. So anyway, let's jump into it. But before we do, just want to remind everyone, click that subscribe button if you like what you see and you want to become part of the Hawks Nest. We are a growing flock of high performers, of passionate people that just love to do things that we love and are passionate about it and love to not just do them, but do them well, right? So that's what we're about. Anyway, let's get into it. Alright, well, I've got the deck up, so let's start off by looking at the Pokemon in the deck. It is built around Tyranitar, so of course we've got our Larvitar in here. I've got 4 of these bad boys in there. If you can get 4 of the alt arts, or the full arts, then by all means, much easier to do online than in person. I think my real deck only has like 1 or 2 of these in here. What is he like? This is poop, right? Like, is he eating poop? I think he is. Anyway, I've got 4 of them. I do throw in some Pupitars in there. I go with this one. I mean, you can't really go wrong with any of the legal ones. I think I've gone through phases of trying. You do have a couple of them. I think it might be like the Pokemon Go one has 90 HP versus 80, but doesn't make a huge difference. I mean, really, you don't want this guy attacking. They all have 1 retreat cost if that is an issue for you. But I'm going to throw 2 of them in just to kind of help with our TM evolution type things or devolutions, and just to help us give some other options in terms of evolving, because we do need to get this guy evolved into Tyranitar EX. One of the first Terra Pokemon to come out, only a few sets in Obsidian Flames, right? Cool Pokemon. I like its concept. He's beefy. He's got 340 HP as a Stage 2 Pokemon, so a little bit higher than some. And then his attacks are pretty interesting. For 1 energy, you can do Mountain Hurl for 120, which is a solid amount for 1 energy, but it does discard the top 2 cards of your deck. So you're usually not going to want to use that one whenever possible. You may discard some cards that you need. Now, Lightning Rampage is what you do want to do, and it's a pretty solid move, especially considering the rest of the deck and some of the mechanics that we're going to be using. So Lightning Rampage deals 150, but if your benched Pokemon have any damage counters on them, this attack's going to do 100 more damage. So for just 2 energy, you're going to be able to be dealing 250 damage as long as you've got someone on the bench that has some damage counters on it. So let's kind of skip through here a little bit and I'll come back. This is how we're going to make sure that we have damage on it, which I'll see in a second. We've got Doduo. We've got 3 of these bad boys in there, 3 Doduo, Reckless Charge 10 to itself. You're not attacking with him, right? This is who we've got, Dodrio. And notice its ability. I've got 3 of these in there, Zooming Draw. Once during your turn, put 1 damage counter on this Pokemon if you do draw a card. So 2 things in 1. It's going to zoom around. I mean, I'm assuming it's zooming around and like hits its head on the wall or something, or on a rock, or on one of your other Pokemon, who knows. But anyway, in theory, this does 2 things. It's going to serve as a draw engine for you, and it's going to ensure that you have damage counters on your bench. So this is really why these 2 pair so great. I remember when the Obsidian Flames came out, really wanting to make this work, and I was like, how can I ensure I have damage counters on me? So it wasn't until this one came out, which was in the 151 set, where we're able to really make this deck work. And guess what? Ballistic Beak is going to do 30 more damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. So in a pinch, you can actually attack and do some damage. It's funny, sometimes my opponents will be like, oh man, I'm tired of this Tyranitar in the active spot hitting me for freaking 250 every turn. I'm gonna go ahead and boss up this Dodrio. Sometimes they can't even attack it, or they're not gonna knock it out. Guess what? You can do a lot of damage. I mean, once you're up to 70 HP, you're hitting for over 200, and as the game goes along, that's gonna be there. And potentially even yourself, you can go ahead and just kind of retreat your Tyranitar with some other mechanics we'll talk about later, and bring him up. Even if he gets knocked out the next turn, it's 1 prizer, and sometimes we're dealing some pretty good damage with him. So this is really like the baseline of what this deck works. You need to make sure you're focusing on getting your Dodrio out and your Tyranitar. So the next Pokemon we have are pretty much just kind of our draw engine aside from him. Because if this was a draw engine alone, drawing 1 card per turn, maybe another one if you've got a second one on bench, is going to be okay, but not extremely reliable. So then I'm going with Bidoof and Bibarel, right? So Bidoof, he's there. We're trying to evolve him quickly. And of course, most people, if you played the game, you know what Bibarel does. He's got the Industrious Incisors or Incisors. I prefer Incisors. I don't know. So obviously, once during your turn, you draw until you have 5 cards in hand. Now that's pretty good too. You're making sure that our hand stays up, and we can shuffle. And then really, because sometimes with our zooming draw, our hand can get up there, but we don't necessarily have what we need. So that's why I throw in the Skwovet. So the Skwovet has the Nest Dash, so maybe we have our hand is already at 5-6 because of our zooming draws, and then we can Nest Dash, shuffle those away, and then we're able to use our Industrious Incisors after that. And a lot of times you make sure that you think this out too, because you're going to want to, there's an order to this. You do Skwovet first, shuffle, you use Incisors, get up to 5, and then you're going to use Zooming Draw. Don't make the misplay of using Zooming Draw and then Bibarel, otherwise you're just wasting your Zooming Draw. Unless you're a little bit worried about like running out of cards, but that shouldn't be an issue because you can just Nest Dash away again. So that is pretty much it for the Pokemon in the deck. So we've got a pretty good draw overall in terms of being able to shuffle. I'm finding myself, really making sure I'm able to get what I want, and even late game, like thinning my deck out and kind of discarding cards I don't need, like maybe using an Ultra Ball and discarding from hand so that I can get rid of some of the cards I don't need. And that way when I'm using my Incisors, it kind of guarantees me the ability to have a pretty good hand of 5, 6, or even 7 if I've got a few on my bench in all of that. So really, and just this goes a little bit into strategy, but considering your bench is 5, a lot of times my goal is to have obviously the 1 Bibarel, the 1 Skwovet, that's 2 bench spots, and then you want to have 2 Dodrios, which gets you to 4, and then at least 1 Tyranitar hanging out, ready to be moved up with another Tyranitar in the active spot. If you can do that, this is going to be a really tough deck to deal with. But again, that's a lot of setup. And most of these are evolution, so the Skwovet's not. So sometimes that's where we're going to run into problems with it, right? But overall, pretty cool deck. Everyone really works in sync and in synergy together. So let's go into the trainers now. Trainer cards. As usual, we are starting off with the Buddy Poffin. This actually, when this card came out, really helped this deck. I mean, I used to play with some Battle VIP passes, but of course those are only good in the beginning. So pretty much all of our basics, well, not pretty much all of them, have 70 or less. So this is going to really help us set up our board if we can get a Buddy Poffin out there early. So I'm going with 3. We don't really need more than that. We have other ways of grabbing our Poffin as well. So I think 3 is a good number. Gutsy Pickaxe. This is just a perfect card for this deck. Reveal the top card. If that card is a ground energy, attach it to one of your bench Pokemon. If not, put it into your hand. So this is really making sure that we can load up our Tyranitar quick. I mean, if we go first and you've got one on bench, you can a lot of times get him into active turn 2 and might maybe even be ready to go potentially because you know, you're attaching one, you've got one on bench, you hit with your Gutsy, or worst case scenario, you just draw a card. I think this is a great card for this deck. It's going to be sad to see it rotate out as it is an F card, but yeah, you know, I mean, we'll also lose Bibarel during that time. But that's a good one. So I've got 4. That's one of pretty much the only one. In fact, as I look at the list, it is our only trainer card that we have 4 of. Because we do kind of have some greedy stuff in here too overall. Night Stretcher, really good card here. You can potentially go with something like a Roseanne's Backup. But of course put a Pokemon or basic energy from discard to hand. This can help you like really load back up if your Tyranitar gets KO'd and you potentially don't have your next one ready to go yet, or if somebody takes out your Bibarel or Dodrio, any of those cards, we're able to bring them back. 3 Night Stretchers. 3 rare candies. We don't need 4 because I've got the 2 Pupitars in there. I think that 3 is a good number, all things considered. Ultra Ball, 3 Ultra Balls. We want to be able to have the ability to grab whatever Pokemon we need, and we need a lot of different kinds in terms of evolution. So thinking about that, needing Dodrio, Bibarel, Pupitar or Tyranitar, things like that, being able to grab those. And it also helps you sometimes just thin out your hand to use Bibarel. You get rid of 2 cards you don't need. Boom, you can draw up to 5. Arven. Now, Arven, I think, is just the best trainer for this deck. Considering, as we're going to see in a minute, we do have a couple tool cards that we can get, and a lot of times those item cards are going to be just what you need to get yourself going, whether it's a rare candy, an Ultra Ball, a Poffin, or whatever. So Arven, I've got 3 of them. Would be nice to have 4, and there's some potential to maybe move out some cards, but I'm going to go with 3. Boss's Orders. We want 3 of those. Your opponent a lot of times is going to try to retreat their Pokemon because even when you're hitting for 250, you're oftentimes not going to one-shot them because of where a lot of Pokemon are at now. You've got too many EXs. I mean, maybe you're going to one-shot an EX that's a basic, but anything other than that, you're going to need 2 hits. You're going to be able to get them back. Iono. I went with 2 Ionos. I actually just made that change like right before my last battle, and I like it. I used to play with 3, and before that I actually played with 3 Professor's Researches before thinking, and I'm like, wait, what am I doing here? I don't like discarding, so I think Iono, I just threw 2 in there. It's one that, you know, we may even remove at some point and kind of add another card of the others, like maybe another Arven, but I like the option of Iono to get your opponent's hand out of here, and even potentially yours. Big Air Balloon. Now this is where it makes this deck kind of unexpectedly good. You know, if we're thinking about our Tyranitar, and it is beefy, it's got 340 HP, but it does have 4 retreat cost. What this is going to do is you're attaching your Big Air Balloon, and now your stage 2 Pokemon, Tyranitar, has no retreat cost, so you're able to swap him out without losing energy and swap in probably another Tyranitar so that you can save yourself from getting knocked out. Obviously, they can still be bossed back up, but potentially it means that you're also able to move him back into the active spot. You know, maybe he gets bossed up again, but not knocked out. You can be switching him out. I like this, and it also, you know, rather than keeping a switch in hand, you're able to just attach that to your Pokemon, and it helps you with your Bibarels and things like that to be able to keep your hand at 5 without having junk there. So I like the big air balloon. I think it really works for this deck. And finally, we have our A-Spec, the Hero's Cape. Sometimes it kind of, you kind of want to think about, do I big air balloon, do I Hero's Cape? But I mean, just think about it, your 440 HP Tyranitar out there just knocking people out over and over. With that, it's usually going to take at least 3 attacks from the best Pokemon to knock him out, if not even sometimes more if they're only hitting for like 150. Still will take 3. But I think the Hero's Cape's a nice card in there to kind of round out the Tyranitar. I don't really see many A-Specs as doing any better here. I will kind of talk about maybe 1 or 2 other specs that we may consider instead, but I think that Hero's Cape's really just the obvious choice here. Alright, now how do we play this deck? Basically, it's all about getting our Tyranitars out. So you really want to load up that bench, which is also going to help you thin out the deck. We want to have everything there so that we have options for our hands. We're rotating our hand out to get what we need. Maybe you need a boss's orders. Maybe you need to make sure you're getting your next Tyranitar loaded up. So having that full bench is going to help make sure you do that. Evolve everybody as quickly as possible. You know, you don't want your Doduos just sitting there, your Bibarels. They're not going to help you out, right? So evolve everyone as fast as you can, obviously the Tyranitar included. And then zooming draw. Make sure, sometimes you may have to make some decisions. Who do you want out first? Do you want to maybe go with evolving and getting the barrel so that you can get your hand up? Or do we want to play it safe, but then potentially stall us out later on with a smaller hand drawing with the zooming draw? I think, in my experience, it's best to prioritize zooming draw over anything else. So get not only your Larvitar evolved, but Doduo into Dodrio, right? And then you're able to rotate your Tyranitar as needed. He is tough and he terrorizes. And then once he's maybe at 300 HP or something, you're going to get that big air balloon and you're going to retreat him into the next one. Or sometimes if you've got 2 of your Doduos or Dodrios on bench, you may even rotate into that one and finish a knockout. I mean, it only takes 50 HP on it, which is 5 turns of zooming draw, and then he's already hitting for like 160. So you may hit for 250. Okay, you don't want him to get knocked out. You're going to retreat. You're going to throw in Dodrio, finish that knockout, and get 2 prizes. Then next turn, your opponent's going to come in and knock out a Dodrio and only get 1 prize. Just also make sure, if you're going to do that, that you have another one ready to go. Maybe save a night stretcher so that you can get it right back out there, right? And then from there, just profit. Strengths and weaknesses. This strengths it's got a really good draw engine here. Compared to a lot of decks, I'm oftentimes like not caring about draw engines and really just trying to make it work in terms of like consistency of my hands. This one is really good for that draw engine with the Skwovet and Bibarel combo, and then adding on the Dodrios. You know, we're able to really cycle through anywhere between 5 and 7 cards per turn, which is a good thing if you get that going, right? So really nice with that. Then you've got a beefy Tyranitar out there who can take a couple hits and only needs 2 energy to load up. You know, sometimes these bigger attackers sometimes need 3 and 4 energy, and it can take some time to build up. He can be loaded up pretty quickly and just start terrorizing really early. And if you can get that, you know, that's the priority, is just speed through this as much as possible, and you can oftentimes beat your opponent into having that big damage. Electric in general right now is a solid lightning is a solid element. You know, you're seeing more and more water decks recently. You know, some of them aren't always now weak to lightning. You know, you do see some I think Lapras EX, if I remember right, is weak to is not weak to water. I think it's weak to like steel or something. But there's a decent amount of decks out there that I've seen while I'm playing that are playing water right now, and then we are seeing some that are electric is returning with the Pikachu EX coming, but you don't see too much ground and fighting decks, so you won't encounter your weakness too much, but it will happen. You do see it occasionally, right? And Dodrio just being a stealth attacker is the strength of this deck. Your opponent a lot of times forgets that he can attack, and he only needs 1 energy to load up. A lot of times you're just going to start loading up for attaching per turns because Tyranitar only needs 2. So usually you're going to start to get extra energy, so attach to there. Also recommend too, once you get to that point of even having your Dodrio load up your Bibarels because he needs 2 to retreat. So think about that and think about energy management and making sure that you are loading everybody up so that you can retreat, because we don't have any switch cards. Our only options for retreating are going to be sacrificing energy or using the big air balloons with the Tyranitar. So not bad. Now, weaknesses. The setup of this deck can be inconsistent. We only have 2 Bibarels and Bidoofs in the deck and 2 Skwovets. And until we really get him out there, there's not a lot of good options for drawing. So we do want to think about that, and it can be tough, you know, getting those Ultra Balls and the right things going. I've had some games where I just have too bad of a setup to recover from, and there is a lot of ways to, but you just really got to think a little bit about like, what am I going to prioritize, considering there's so many different Pokemon we need to get this to work. Can make it a little bit tough. 250 max damage, you know, that sounded really good when this card came out, but now we've really seen with these stage 2 EXs coming with the new Scarlet and Violet era is compared to like a lot of the V-Stars of times past, and really bringing in just regular base Vs as attackers. It's not quite as good as it used to be. When this first came out and we still saw a lot of Vs, I was able to one-shot a lot of Pokemon. But now as the Vs are coming out of favor, we're seeing a lot more stage 2s that are just able to absorb those hits. So we're really, a lot of times you may be trading 1 for 1. That's why it's so important to just get this going and hope that you can start knocking out at least a turn or even 2 sooner than your opponent, so you're just not trading knockouts there. And this does rely on you having bench damage. So if your opponent quickly realizes that, a lot of times what they're going to do is, rather than knocking out your Tyranitar EX, they may just start bossing up or counter catching or doing what they got to do to get your Dodrios into the active spot and then knocking them out. And then in addition to the bench damage, we also have to think about the fact that there's no bench protection. This one is really not even just one of me like always hating bench protection as it is. There is no way I'm going to fit in any type of bench protection here without having to move things around and eliminate like a Skwovet or something. So bench protection is just is cut out of here. So that's why it's also so important to get these guys up. They're going to be sitting ducks out there on your bench. Luckily, your Larvitar's got 70 HP, so it's not going to get one shot by those what the heck is it, Dragapults and stuff like that. But we are going to want to get those evolved as quickly as possible. And you do want to think that your zooming draw is going to bring your Dodrio in the vulnerable state of, you know, that one might be down to like, once you have 40 damage on it, now it is going to get one shot. So tough stuff there. There is a lot to it, but again, I think this deck can work, can be competitive at the very least, but, you know, again, it's not a meta deck. We established that early. Other cards to consider in this deck. Now this one probably not one to include, but I included this Tyranitar in the original iteration of this deck, and I actually threw in the Luminous Energy so that it would give me a little bit of flexibility in terms of being able to use its ability, but I was really stuck with just using Route. And it's not a bad move, You know, let's say that you are encountering a deck that has rock type and you don't want to get your Tyranitar Ex one shot for 2 prizes. I thought, you know, let's throw it in and make some flexibility with the regular Tyranitar, which is going to be from the Paldea Evolved, I believe. It's a solid move for 1 energy that does 30 more damage for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So can do up to about 180 if they've got a full bench. So solid move for 1 energy. You're probably just going to get him knocked out from there. But I included him in there for a while, and it was pretty easy to just try to throw 1 Luminous on my Larvitars just in case, you know, to see what I've got. But I ended up removing it because I just felt like it was better to just focus on getting all the way up into the Tyranitar EX. A little bit better. And then also it let me play, I actually play 10 energy in this one. I was going 8 ground and 2 luminous, so that way I just got the 10. It helps me hit on the Gutsy Pickaxe a little bit more. Right. Now another one to think about here is the Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon. And this one's a solid move, you know, just to kind of throw out there. He's a basic to put on your bench, and it does prevent all damage from attacks by a Pokemon that have an ability, so it does add an element of control. Sometimes you may be able to just kind of keep him in the active spot while you're getting the rest of your bench ready. Although the problem is it adds like 1 different Pokemon to throw out there. You know, where does he fit? You know, if you're trying to get your bench, as I mentioned, with the 2 Dodrios, 2 Larvitar, a Skwovet, like where does he fit? But maybe it's one you keep in your hand, and if you see your opponent is playing like pure ability Pokemon, you know, you're able to really make something happen and really block them. So it may be worth it to think about just add 1, you know, just add 1 to the deck, and maybe it'll go. And you know, the fact that he needs 3 energy, you know, you can oftentimes just have him hang out on the bench for a little bit and load up slowly because your Tyranitar is pretty easy to do so. So I may consider adding just 1 of them to the deck. Just, you know, he's there. If we use him, cool. If not, we don't, right? Pidgeot EX. I tried. I thought, let's try him out over the Bibarel, because I think in many decks, ever since Pidgeot's come out, he's really like replaced a lot of them. But I think overall he's a little bit harder to make work for a few reasons. Like, I don't want to add in another card in terms of a Pidgeotto. I mean, in theory, we could remove the 2 Skwovets, and then we've got the Pidgeot EX, 2 Pidgeys for the Skwovets, and 2 and 2, right? We've got 2 of each. I just don't feel like it works as well. I think the mechanic of cycling through your hand with the Skwovet and Bibarel works a little bit better in this case, but you may want to try it, give it a shot. You may like it better, and maybe I'm just kind of not giving it as much of a chance. I only won a few battles with it, but just the fact that you have to go from from a basic to a stage 2, you already have to do that with your Larvitar to Tyranitar. So I don't think so. I didn't like it. All right, let's think about some trainers. This one is one that I'd like to throw in there. It's debatable for me to replace like my Ionos with it. If your opponent has 2 prize cards remaining, then knockouts from your Terra Pokemon for that turn take 1 more prize card. As we know, our only attacker is Tyranitar EX, which is a Terra Pokemon, so that can potentially be a 3 prize hit on there. It's pretty good, especially in a close game, but I don't feel like it's a little bit too situational for my liking. But let me know what you think. This one, I may be underestimating this card in this deck, because a part of me also thinks that this may just take it to the next level. So we'll think about it. We'll go over the ace specs last, but let's think about Kieran. This is another card that I'm like just considering for like every deck now. You know, being able to switch your active with one of your bench. You know, maybe you don't have that big air balloon. Maybe you got someone else stuck in the active. But then the other great thing about that is attacks used by your Pokemon do 30 more to EX or Vs. So that's just really good. I mean, your Tyranitar can potentially go up to 280, or even, shoot, you may use it with your Dodrio, and now he's hitting for some good damage out there. So solid card too. Again, one that I may think about replacing like the Iono with, since we only have 2, right? Now, Perrin, we got Kieran and Perrin. Similar sounding names. Anyway, reveal up to 2 Pokemon in your hand and put them into your deck. If you do, search your deck for that many Pokemon, reveal them and put them into your hand. Something I see in this deck decent amount too is getting the wrong Pokemon. I might already have my Dodrio out, and now I've got a hand of a Dodrio and something I don't need. So the ability to kind of swap out your hand for like the Pokemon you need is pretty good. It's one that may be considerable to try out as well, to really just get the Pokemon that we need out there, because we do have such a variety of Pokemon we need on our bench. So this one's one to think about, because it gets you exactly what you need. A little bit, it could be a little bit better than an Iono. So I may think about it. In fact, I think I might even try out, I'll at least try one game out with it. It may not be enough to get a true sample size, but it may work. Now, another card that I just really like to look at anytime I have an A-Spec tool in the deck is the Roseanne's Backup. I feel like Night Stretch is just a little bit too good in terms of the instantaneous coming back to hand. But, I mean, the ability to shuffle a Pokemon, a tool, a stadium, and energy back into the deck is just so key. We're able to really recycle that hero's cape or whatever. Maybe you're going to swap for a max belt or something to put that back in, and also be able to get back a tool. I mean, not a tool, but a Pokemon as well. You know, maybe you've got your other couple Dodrio prized, so you get one knocked out, you haven't gotten them back. So solid, but I think overall Night Stretcher is the way to go here, right? And A-Specs. Okay, A-Specs, I've got Max Bell, always one to consider as well. That this can get your Tyranitar hitting for 300. So that's pretty good. That's going to knock out a little bit more EXs in one shot, but really, like, going from 250 to 300 isn't, I don't think it's gonna make that big of a dent. You know, what EXs have that? You know, usually they're in the basic area where they're hitting for, you know, 220, 230, so you're gonna one-shot them. And then if they're a stage 2, they're usually on the 300 plus and 310, 320. You know, you might hit a stage 1 that's sitting around like 270, but I don't see a lot of play in those. So I'm not going to use Max Belt, but something to consider. Now, here's one that I do kind of like a lot, which is Amulet of Hope. It's a tool card as well, so it can potentially be recycled with your Roseanne's Backup if you want to combo that one in there. So if the Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out, you search your deck for up to 3 cards and put them in your hand. So that can be something that can really like supercharge you. You know, if you're kind of going a little bit slow and struggling to set up, you know, you want to search that maybe Amulet of Hope early and attach it to just whoever the heck you have to start off in your active, and then you're going to be able to really pull what you need. Like, let's say you've got your Dodrio or your Doduo in a Larvitar on bench, and you've got a rare candy in hand. You get knocked out, you're able to pull your Dodrio, you're able to pull a what do you call it, a Tyranitar, whatever. You know, there's a lot of options that really help get you set up and get the cards you need. So this one is one I would consider, really the first time I've considered Amulet of Hope at all for any decks so far. But that is going to do it. That's all the alts here, not too many. I think this deck, in my opinion, has what it needs, so not too much needing to be switched out. And that is going to do it for us today in the Hawks Pokemon Nest. I am Brian, and as always, thank you for watching. I appreciate this. I appreciate you all entertaining me, or being entertained, hopefully, by my crazy rogue decks I make, and this time it being tough, terrorizing Tyranitar. Let me know in the comments. You know, I'm very open to ideas of rogue decks to make next. I mean, I've got a huge backlog. I've really, like, that's all I do when in Pokemon. I make rogue decks, so you're rarely gonna see me with much like meta decks out there. I may come with something that's a little bit similar or off-brand of a meta deck, but I'm never gonna just get a list and go exactly as it is. There's no fun in that to me. My fun is less in winning games and more in just like creating something that's at least competitive and that's different. So let me know if you want me to try it out. If I like it enough, I'll make that deck, and we'll see. So let me know, and let me know what differences you would want to see to this deck and ideas out there. But of course, make sure to stay tuned, because later on this week we will have the next video out where we're going to take this to TCG Live so you can see it in action. But of course, until then, make sure that you hit that subscribe button so you can join the Hawk's Nest. We are a growing flock of high performance lovers, of peak performance seekers, of empowered and passionate people, and I hope that you all enjoyed seeing me nerd out and be passionate over what I love, which is Pokemon. And until then, we'll see you next time.